Okay, I would like to call this meeting of the Governance and Ethics Committee meeting on Monday, December 4th, 2023 to order at 3:05 p.m. Maria, can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Jane,
Oh, I need to read. Oh, sorry. Yes, here.
Committee Member Gilmore, Committee Member Shahal.
Okay, I would like to say this meeting will be recorded. The Zoom application will notify you that this meeting is being recorded. Please press continue on the Zoom application to stay in the meeting. Use the raise your hand feature in Zoom when you would like to speak on an item, and also lower your hand when you are done speaking. Please unmute when called to speak and mute yourself when you are done speaking. If you're calling in by phone, identify yourself by name before speaking on an item. Press *9 on your phone to raise and lower your hand. Press *6 if you are participating by phone to unmute. Okay, with that, we can start. We have one item on the consent calendar. Those are the minutes, approval of the September 11th, 2023 Governance and Ethics Committee meeting minutes. Are there any comments or updates or a motion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Right now we have public presentations or any member of the public that would like to speak on an item that is not on the agenda.
We do not have anyone online.
Okay, no one here in the chambers, so we can now move on to general business. This is an action item on the Santa Clara Police Department's recommendation to name the police building's motorcycle garage to the Pete Malay Traffic Unit Motorcycle Garage. I believe Chief Nikolai will be presenting.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you. So this is something I'm pretty excited to bring forward, and it's not often you get to talk about a true hero. But when you look at Pete Malay's career before he became a police officer, he is truly an American hero. He was served in the military with distinguish and actually received a Silver Star with Valor and 2 Bronze Stars with Valor. And just for clarification, the Silver Star is really the award just below the Congressional Medal of Honor. Shows you kind of what actually he did. And if you ever get a chance to read his citation, it's pretty amazing. But after a military career, he joined the Santa Clara Police Department, and he had a nice 26-year career. What was unique about him is he spent 25 years as a motor officer. That will never be repeated. That was back in the day where you got onto the motors and you could be there for life if you wanted. We've since changed that, and the most you can do now is 5 years at a time. So his accomplishment of 25 years will never be repeated. And what's very critical or interesting about that is he was one of our first motor officers. He became one of our trainers, and his training regimen is still in use to this day. It's something that has lasted. In addition to his motor career, he was also one of our SWAT team members and was instrumental in creating our SWAT team, which is currently called the Special Response Team. And again, some of the things that he taught us that he brought from the military are still in use to this day. So when you look at someone for their career and for their entire lifetime achievement, I think when you look to name a facility, this is the type of person you want to name a facility for. The only other facility we have at the police department that's named was the THF, which we named after our Carla Munoz, our first JS officer that passed away from cancer. And that was actually several years ago we brought that forward. And only recently, because of COVID, we were able to have that ceremony and have her plaque posted and had her family come in. So assuming that this goes forward the same way, early next year, we will invite the Malay family to come to town and honor him in person. So thank you very much for your time.
Do we have a discussion?
I'd like to move approval of the
I'll
request.
just second, and I just want a brief comments. I did meet Officer Malay. He was in my neighborhood, and he was a very gentleman person, and he deserves the naming of that. Thank you.
Any members of the public?
No members online.
Okay, all in favor of staff's recommendation? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief. All right, now we move on to our third item on the agenda. This is review of council policy and procedure 007, citizen complaints addressed to the city council, and approve amended policy constituent complaints addressed to the city council. So City Manager Jovan Grogan will be presenting.
Thank you, Chair Suggs and other members of the Governance and Ethics Committee. Happy to support this item. We have a PowerPoint that I will walk the committee through and respond to any questions. So as you noted, our 007 or our James Bond policy, as we commonly refer to it, is for citizen complaints addressed to the City Council. That policy was last revised in 1992, and so time for some adjustments. The policy provides a general framework for handling constituent requests. However, there are some challenges with the current policy, but the primary goal of the policy, like the primary goal of me as your city manager, is to ensure exceptional service to constituents and provide the City Council with support on issues that may arise through your interactions with the public. So a few items of note about the current policy. So the current policy actually provides for the council to direct matters that are to an employee that is not the city manager. In addition, the current policy states that the city manager will investigate a complaint and respond to the citizen on the council member's behalf, or will draft a letter for the council member's signature if that is preferred. We do not currently do that now. The city has on the city council 2 versions of letterheads, one for the entire city council and one for the mayor. And then there are just some other items in the policy that frankly don't reflect what we do today. And so in order to address that, we are proffering revisions to the policy, as well as there is a city manager's memo that was released that provides guidance on how council members should submit requests for and constituent inquiries to city staff. And that memorandum, you all have a copy. You received it via email a few days ago. It will periodically be updated when staff members and assignments change. So if we go to the next slide, just to note about the proposed changes to the policy. So the mayor and council, the policy notes, may receive requests in many formats, right? By phone, in person, email, or in writing. The policy is intended to cover requests and inquiries from labor unions, as well as entities, both nonprofit or for-profit, that conduct or seek to conduct business with the city, and entities that receive or seek support from the city in the form of grants or other contributions. In general, it's everybody. And so we wanted to make that clear that the term constituents for this policy is intentionally defined to be broad and inclusive of not just residents and businesses, but entities that may contact you. Next slide. The revised policies states in section 1, council members should strive to refer constituents to the official service request system where they can submit their requests directly. As you know, that system is My Santa Clara. There are periodic reports from My Santa Clara, but it's also worth noting, and it's in the memorandum that you received, is that a general service request that's submitted by a council member actually adds additional steps to the process, an additional feedback loop. And oftentimes, if the request is simple in nature, it may get to the person that is actually going to satisfy or fulfill that request quicker if it comes in directly on My Santa Clara versus involving staff in the city manager's office or the mayor and council staff. In addition, doing that may reduce follow-up that's oftentimes needed with council members to clarify the intent of the constituent's request, as well as other items. Next, in 1B, it says council members may refer constituent inquiries to the city manager or other staff as designated by the city manager, and that is clearly outlined in the memorandum. Section 2 notes constituent or addresses constituent operational and policy interpretation questions. So 2A states council members shall refer operational and policy interpretation questions on specific matters to the city manager or appropriate staff. This is really important. I don't know that I've come across it here, but I have in other cities where council members may receive a request and they take it upon themselves to conduct their own research and interpret operational policies. And sometimes they may not get it right. And so that causes challenges. And so through this policy, we just wanted to make it very clear for current and future council members that all operational and policy interpretation requests should be referred to staff. Council members shall refrain from interpreting city policy and suggesting solutions to operational matters to constituents or city staff, with the exception of the two council appointees, the city manager and the city council member, as well as other elected officials. There can be emails where a council member may suggest a potential solution, and if that occurs, your constituent may take your position as an elected official to believe that that is the decision that the organization can make. However, that may not be the decision that the organization comes to once a full investigation of the matter is done, and we look at all appropriate policies. And so 2B just notes that. 3 is the council members should not attempt to serve as a proxy for policy or operational matters raised by a constituent. This includes requesting generic information from city staff and/or conducting research independent of city staff and attempting to answer or resolve the operational matter. A slight restatement of what I said before, but there are times where council members have a constituent request, but they don't provide the information to staff, and they instead utilize their position as a council member to seek information and then provide that information back. And through 2C, what we're conveying is provide it to staff. We will certainly do all the legwork and support you and your colleagues in responding. The next section revolves legal matters, really straightforward. Council members shall refer legal matters received from constituents to the city attorney or appropriate staff as designated by the city attorney and refrain from interpreting legal matters. So that's really the presentation we have. The report, as you know, discussed a number of items, and the memo was approximately 3 pages and went into significant detail providing the communication channel, designated city staff, as well as commitments on keeping the city council informed once a request is received, once a request has been completed, and also committing that we will do our best to respond to all inquiries within 48 hours or sooner. And lastly, the memorandum discussed the 10-minute rule, which allows council members to reach out to department heads for really high-level inquiries. So that concludes the report. Happy to address any questions with regard to the proposed revisions.
Okay, are there any questions from fellow committee members? Raj.
Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, City Manager. I have a question, like I got the other memo also, which you prepared. I also got the other memo which you prepared for council, basically. And on that, one of the last sentence on para is, staff will then work directly with the constituent to resolve the issue without a copy to the council member. However, the staff will acknowledge the council member request and inform the council member when the matter has been addressed. So what happens sometimes is council member is not in the loop, addressed in a positive way or a negative way, whichever way the staff has decided about it. So I would say when the council, let's say I refer a matter, right, for a constituent and staff decides one way or the other, it's resolved or it could not be resolved because of the current ordinances which cannot be implemented in that particular case, right? But as a council member, we should be knowing that, hey, yeah, we got it. it was not resolved because these factors, or it got resolved because of these factors. That information will be handy to us because the constituent might, let's say it's not resolved, constituent will come back to us, hey, we referred to you, it did not get resolved. So at that time, I will not have any information why it was not resolved. But if I have that email, final email, which reflects that matter has been resolved or not resolved because of following reasons, I'll be in a better position to tell them, hey, yeah, it got resolved or not resolved. So that's my request on that.
Lisa?
So. How do you want?
Well, go ahead, go ahead.
So, sure. Councilmember Jahal or Committee Member Jahal. I want to go back to that section in the memo because just before that, it says that when it is appropriate to provide the council member with a summary of the response, that will be done. However, there are instances where a council member may receive a constituent complaint or concern, turn that over to staff, but it may involve something that would not be appropriate to share the intimate details with the council member. For example, I received a late charge that I thought was excessive, and I reached out to my council member. Council turns that over to staff. Staff then works with the constituent on the details of their bill, but we would not provide the details of that response to the council member. However, we will strive to provide you with a complete enough summary so you will know the reasons why staff made, if it's possible, to tell you the decision we made. There are instances where we would not, but we would attempt to provide you with all of the information that we can, but just wanted to respect that there may be instances where the full complement of information may not be known, and we will have conversations with staff and work on an internal practice to ensure that we're giving that complete information. I know it's been a little consistently inconsistent. One of the reasons why we published the memo to have specific channels where requests go into so that we can track performance and ensure that we are replying to council members.
That makes sense. Like, at least if you point the bullet points, that's good enough. We don't want all the details. Like if there are 5 emails exchanged with the constituent, we don't want that, but the final decision and the bullet points, that's good enough. Thank you.
Lisa?
Thank you. As a matter of course, I normally just go through the mayor and council offices or the city manager's office or the city attorney's office. I've done that my entire political career. It's safer that way and always works best. But for practical purposes, I would say the mayor's office gets probably the lion's share of complaints throughout the city. And so what I've done in the past is I collect all the complaints, and then usually I have a meeting on Friday morning with the mayor and council staff, and I unload the complaints on them, and then they send them either to this, probably to the city, I don't know where they send them, wherever they need to go. Unless there's something very time sensitive, then I'll send directly to the city manager with a copy to the mayor and council staff. So I was told recently I can't do that anymore, and that I have to send them in as they come in. And many of these complaints, sometimes people call and they'll send an email, and I just forward the emails over. I can't do it individually during the week because I have a job, another job. So I have been doing it on Friday, and like I said, I collect them and then put them in at once. So I don't know, I don't understand why I can't continue to do that once a week and then send the important ones that are timely directly to the city manager.
Right.
I don't know, am I saying it wrong, Maria? I don't know if I'm saying it wrong, but I was told I can only talk about scheduling things now on Friday, but I don't have time during the week because I'll get maybe, I don't know, 15, 20. I mean, there's a fair amount of them. And some need explanation.
Right. Mayor, I think that that's a logistical matter that we should handle with staff and work with you on. I totally understand and know the value that comes into the mayor's office because people oftentimes find the mayor's name.
That's what they do,
and
yeah.
send things in.
Yeah.
And I think on the memo, mayor and council staff is a designated channel. as well as the email address. So I think we can work that out logistically through
Okay.
what's articulated in the memo. If it requires revising the memo, we'll do. Specifically with regard to the proposed adjustments to the 007 policy, I don't think anything we're talking about requires a change to what's proposed in the policy. I think that that's an operational.
That's okay operationally, because I don't send to department heads. I don't call department heads. I don't talk to them unless I see them at a council meeting or something. So, I always do the chain the way we're supposed to do it according to the charter. Okay.
I have a few questions. First, for the public, I think my experience with the My Santa Clara app is that it goes into a tracking database. So nothing ever gets lost, whereas emails can get lost. So I encourage the public to use the My Santa Clara app for regular requests, tree trimming or potholes or whatever, garbage dumping. I'm trying to understand, we've been revising, and it's amazing that this policy has not been revised since 1992. So, and we didn't have My Santa Clara app. So it's about time that we're revising some of these policies. But, we're revising a number of policies, but then there's this memo. And so how does the memo work with the policy? And presumably the memo is a public document. It's an addendum to this policy, or what? I'm just trying to understand that.
Thank you, Chair Jane. The memo and the policy work in tandem, but they're actually independent. In that the policy is something that's adopted by council that provides guidance for how council members should address constituent complaints. And by and large, the policy says that in alignment with the charter, the city council members shall provide citizen inquiries or complaints to the city manager. The communications memo articulates from the city manager how he or she would like to handle those. Given the volume, it is not efficient nor effective for council members to submit all requests directly to the city manager. Different city managers have different approaches to handling constituent complaints. I think mine is more or less consistent with the practice here, even though we're adjusting some of the channels. And so the memo just provides the city managers guidance on how to submit. And so that's why the policy says to the city manager or designee. Designee really refers to the person designated in the memorandum.
Okay, I see. So that clarifies that the memo is kind of like the sort of the personal way that the city manager wants to handle things. It could change from city manager to city manager,
Yeah.
but the policy is adopted by the council, and that's law essentially. Okay, I get it.
The implementing document.
Yeah. Okay, my last question was that, in the past, with the previous city manager, I used to get responses from the city manager, and then it was always confusing to me whether I could forward those to a constituent, because there's that deliberative work product issue that goes on there. So I kind of like that the city manager's office will then respond directly to the constituent, and then I don't get stuck with any issues with deliberative work product. So I think that is part of the goal here. Is that correct?
I don't know that the goal is to avoid the deliberative work product, but certainly the goal is for the staff to process and address the requests or complaints that come in through the city council as a channel and respond directly to the constituent, but also provide the city council members with the appropriate information on how that complaint was resolved. Now, Chair Jane, in your statement, you brought up you triggered a thought that is not in the communications memo, but it's worth mentioning, which is there are many, many different channels for constituent requests and complaints to get addressed. Oftentimes, a constituent may not want to go through the designated channel and may feel that, oh, because I know a council member or I have a council member's email address, if I give it to them, it will be done faster, or quicker, or better, right? And so it's important just to note that even though a item comes in through a council member, it does not get prioritized higher or is resolved any different than any other matter. In fact, much of the items that come in through council members, which is why we're designating appropriate channels and wanting to direct people to the My Santa Clara app, go through the normal resolution process in whatever department or service matter or program matter that the request or complaint is related to. And that's important for consistency, for fairness, and to ensure that council members are not utilizing their position as a council member to attempt to get a constituent matter resolved differently or faster or better.
Glenn.
Mr. Chair, to respond a little more to your question consistent with what City Manager just described, I think one of the sensitivities of the channel of communication between me and any of you, or the city manager with any of you, is that oftentimes those communications, whether or not they're public documents or not, are designed to be communications to you and aren't necessarily framed in a way that's appropriate to share, right? It may be deliberative process. There may be reference to confidential information. It may just, it may share something, you know, that would be something for you to know, but not necessarily be part of the message to the representative. So I think in that instance, it's a good default conclusion for you that if you're receiving something from me or the city manager, it's intended only for you or the group of you to whom it's addressed and not naturally something that you should forward.
So convenient to forward it.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, if you ask, sometimes it is an appropriate, hey, can I forward this, right? But more often than not, it'll be, you know, there's a different, you know, better way to do that. But the default for me, and you can speak for yourself, is if it's sent to you, it's not, it's designed for you.
Okay, very good. Raj.
Thank you, Chair. So I have a follow-up question on two topics, basically on the same topic. My Santa Clara app, like we know we have different categories of complaints we can do through My Santa Clara app. Do we have statistics that, okay, let's take garbage issues on that particular, I'm not sure what particular head is there. Do we have a statistic that on these issues, the resolution happens within, say, average 5 days, average 2 days, or like street payment repairs? I think there's a longer lead time. So do we have a statistics on that, okay, this is the gap a resident should expect, because there have been instances resident reported it and they say, hey, nobody has done it for a month or so. So if we have that statistic some way conveyed to us, or some form of, we can understand because Public Works is a busy department and they may not be able to fulfill our request within a month, even if it is a payment issue, repair payment issue. But if they are transparently knowing, hey, there's a backlog going on, there's at least 4-month backlog, it would be much better on the different categories if we have that. That's my first question, then I have another one.
Good question, Member Jahal. And the answer is a little bit of yes and a little bit of no. But it's important in answering your question to understand what My Santa Clara app is and what it's not. And so the My Santa Clara app is what in the industry is called a CRM tool, a customer relations management tool. It is a generic tool or general tool where people can submit service requests or items to the city, right? It is not our workload management system that, let's say, public works staff may use to complete service requests, or street staff will use as they prioritize paving streets. It's the entry point. It's not always the final exit point. And so in running statistics from the CRM tool, you may not get the final resolution date, right? Something may be closed on the CRM tool, but it's still open because a customer, a resident had a question around or a complaint saying my street needs to be paved. Well, in reality, we know how streets are paved, right? It's budget, it's based on CPI, but that request isn't left open in the CRM tool because the street may not be paid for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years, depending on its prioritization. And so it's not an easy answer to say, yes, we can publish performance stats on resolutions because that's not what the tool is designed or used for.
So my request on that would be, if we have different categories of My Santa Clara app options to fill in a request, when we do get a confirmation, oh, your request has been received and it's being looked after, can we have a follow process that in this particular category, hey, there's a waiting list of 1 month, 2 months or something as a follow-up tool so that the resident is not waiting. Everybody expects, oh, it should be corrected tomorrow. It should be corrected tomorrow. But practically it's not possible to be. But to inform them after we send a auto reply to them after that, say within a week or so, hey, we looked into it, concerned department, and you are in the queue, it will be fixed within approximately X amount of days.
Member Jahal, let me look into exactly how the responses occur on the CRM tool. I will tell you that I've seen a number of them where that reply is made, where a citizen requests an item, it's an item that needs to be prioritized and put in another system. There is a reply given to the citizen on My Santa Clara, and then the item is closed out. And so I do believe that that's done, but I'll follow up in a different venue.
Thank you. And my second request was, we have a tracking document for the request which each council member submits, completed, not pending or ongoing, right? And I do request that document, and I did get it nicely, like where my requests are basically. Do you think we can make it a shared document, just like you share with us the tracker, right? Do you think we can have that document as a shared document with the council members so that they proactively, if they want to see on a particular day, oh, these are all fulfilled, these are all complete.
I do think that there's a license issue with giving council members permissions to the CRM tool. But what I'm hearing is you would like either regular updates on the status of items, but right now you're able to request a report on demand, correct? Okay.
Yeah, we get it. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Lisa, did you have your hand?
Yes, thank you. I have personally introduced the Santa Clara app to so many people. And because I think it's better because it really has cut my complaints in half when they go and use the app. I have to say, have not received any follow-up complaints that the work wasn't getting done or their item wasn't resolved timely. So I don't have any complaints, in that respect. So, and I've put in complaints myself that are resolved over a period of time, and they do keep you informed. And then when it's finished, and that's what I tell people, if you want it tracked, this is the best way to do it. So those are, I'll call them minor-ish complaints, but they're not minor to the people that are putting in like a street light out or graffiti or things like that are usually resolved fairly quickly. Anything that's above that, though, those are the things that need to go to the city manager's office. And I think if the city council just made it a habit to send everything to the city manager's office and through our mayor and council office, if that's the way to go, that's just make it a rule of thumb and just do it that way. It's the easiest way to go. I explained to people that put the complaints in that the city council is not responsible for the daily operations of the city. It has to go through the manager's office. And so once they understand that it's not within my purview to solve the issue or to direct any member of our city staff to solve the issue, then it sort of gets it off my plate into the professionals. And then I know if it's not resolved, because I'll get so many that it's hard for me to keep in my own mind track of the ones I put in, because if I don't hear from them again, I'm thinking, oh, that's great. Sometimes I hear twice, like nobody's called me, and then I'll send it in a second time, and just like that. But for the most part, you have to trust that the staff is going to get it done. And once it goes through the city manager's office, that they're going to get it done. And it's not up to us to direct anybody to do it, but we can inform once we get some information. And a lot of times we'll get information back from the city manager's office or staff that says, here's how we're gonna, resolve this. And then I will contact the constituent and say, hey, the manager's office is, they're on top of it, and you're gonna be hearing from someone soon. And if you don't, let me know. And I do it that way. But I think it's fairly simple. I think we're all safe if we take whatever information we have or complaints and send it either through my Santa Clara or the city manager's office.
You have a response?
No, the mayor's comments just reminded me of something that I did in a prior city, which is we developed a template that people could put in their signature panel of their email to say, if you have a concern, utilize the My Santa Clara app. And so we can provide that to city council, just a little template that you can cut and paste into your signature panel, so we can continue to get information about the app out there.
Very good. So do we have any member of the public that would like to speak on this?
There's no one with their hand raised or online.
Okay, do we have a motion? Approve amendments.
I'll make that motion, approve the amendments and recommend to council.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, now we move on to the next item, which is item number 4. This, I think the presentation on this is from Maria and Nora. It's review council policy and procedure 041, public submittal of written and audiovisual materials for council meetings.
Thank you, Chair Jane. Good afternoon, committee members. As part of our routine review, as mentioned, of our council policies manual, this agenda item is to review council policy 041, which is the public submittal of written and AV materials for council meetings. As background, council policy 041 was established in 2006 to provide guidance on the public to submit written and audiovisual materials for city council meetings. The purpose of the policy is to establish a clear outline for procedures for the public so they know their ways to submit anything written, a digital file, AV files before a council meeting. In the next few slides, staff recommends proposed amendments to the policy to align with our current procedures and to modernize the policy. Staff work with the city clerk's office and the IT department just to make sure we align with the recommended changes for what works for all the departments. In addition, upon the final approval of the amended policy, staff will develop an informational web page with topics on how to participate in public meetings and how to submit written and digital materials to make it easier for the public so they understand the process. Next, I'll turn the slides over to our Assistant City Clerk, Nora Pimentel, to share more.
Thank you, Maria. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Nora Pimentel, Assistant City Clerk. So as the public facing office, the city clerk's office handles the submission from the public for the public meetings. So the following proposed changes will align with our current staff procedures. This slide will include proposed amendments, including revising deadlines for submittal of written materials from 12 p.m. on Wednesday, 1 week prior to the city council meeting, to be amended to be due by 10 a.m. on Wednesday, 1 week prior to the city council meeting. These are for the residents who would like to submit something and have it attached to a council agenda item or a particular item. And so that is the time when the time frame when we are finalizing our agenda for a Thursday or Friday publication. This also updates the deadlines for the submittal of written materials after the posting of the city council meeting. And as you know, it's called, as you may know, it's called post-meeting material or PMM. This would amend the time from receiving it from 5 PM, the day of the meeting, to 12 PM, the day of the meeting. And this is in an effort that you would be able to, staff would be able to send it to you in a more timely manner, that you can see something that's been received that day than at 5 PM. You know, 5 PM, we may be already in a council meeting. The next slide includes the following proposed changes. The policy includes additional language to include options to submit e-comments. So this was something we didn't have back in 2006. Legistar has an e-comment function that is available to the public 72 hours or more before the meeting, when the agenda gets posted, and closes 15 minutes before the start of the council meeting. And these comments go directly to council via iLegislate on your iPad. So you're able to see as soon as they come across. This also includes the process for submission of digital audio-visual materials before a council meeting, such as videos, audio, PowerPoint presentations. These may be sent by email to the clerk email box or by uploading to a secure digital electronic file program called Hightail. This is something new that we'll be using. This would be something that staff would provide access to the public. And this process aligns with the city's cybersecurity protocols, which does not allow for foreign devices to be connected to our system and uploading. And we also needs to have proper screening. So with that, we request that the committee discuss the council policy 041 and provide any other revisions that you may see fit. Available for any questions.
Okay, any questions from committee members? Lisa?
Thank you for that. I had a question, I think, City Clerk, on the items that the written materials that are due 1 week prior to the city council meeting, and you changed it. I want to know why from 10 AM to 12 PM, why the 2 hour time? I was curious about that part, but I have another question.
So just for staff purposes, and we're processing a full agenda packet that day, and we actually, our internal departments is 3:00 PM, because we have to, so when we receive things from the outside.
By Wednesday,
by
right?
Wednesday.
Okay.
We also have to screen the information that's coming through, and we'll check with the department or the city manager's office. So it just allows for a little more time to do that screening process and get it uploaded onto that agenda item that it will pertain to.
My follow-up question is, are these items, I guess, only for public presentations? Because at that point, the public doesn't know what's on the city council agenda.
Well, no, these are for items that will be on that agenda. And you know, we have the TMAC that's up, and that shows.
So they're supposed to look at the TMAC? No, I'm just,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean.
for practical purposes, they're supposed
So
to.
sometimes we have planning commission items that folks are following, and
Mhm.
they know when it's coming to a council meeting. And those have been the items that we've seen where folks want to submit a PowerPoint presentation and get their 2 minutes up and show something, or get us information that they would like you as a council to review prior to a consideration that evening. So that's why they have to have it. If they want it in the agenda packet, it must be in timely.
And where is the TMAC located?
It's on our website, under, I couldn't tell you off the top.
Okay,
But it is up. Thank you.
it's in the city clerk, because I don't even know where it is. Okay. All right, thank you. Those are my questions.
Yeah, Raj.
One clarifying question on the second part where updates deadline for the submittal of written material on the day of the council meetings. So 12 PM is the deadline. Is that only for the public, or let's say a council member has something to present, for that also the same deadline applies?
That would be helpful, but this is for the public because, as I stated, 5 o'clock, we may be already in a council meeting, and I don't have staff in the office that may be seeing emails coming through. And so then the public will miss the opportunity that you'll have your eyes on that information that they would like you to review on a specific matter. So it's better for an earlier time,
Right.
which allows us then to turn it around and get to you before.
Okay.
meeting.
City Manager.
Just an additional note on that point. In preparing for this, staff was reminded of what would happen 20 years ago if someone brought something to the meeting and you'd have an overhead projector. And there are new versions of that, and we're having internal discussions about potentially getting in an overhead camera. So if someone does bring something to the meeting, it can be shown, because there can be times where someone brings something to the meeting, the council is utilizing it or looking at it for their deliberations, but people either in the audience or at home do not have that information. And so know that we are looking into potentially that addition. It will require additional logistics. And so before we take that step, we need to have more conversation.
So, yeah, the policy of delivering the documents, before the council agenda is even out, was always perplexing to me, because you had to be clairvoyant or have a crystal ball to know what was on the agenda. And the TMAC was really, whenever I looked at it, was out of date and it was not maintained. And I know I have a new commitment from the city manager that the TMAC will be maintained, so that people will know in advance. But again, the TMAC's only released on that Wednesday. So it still doesn't give people time before this deadline. So maybe the TMAC needs to come out even a day earlier, so that the public can submit these items that then will be in the packet. Because all the other ones are just presented at the council meeting and then are post-meeting materials. But I do want to encourage the public to go look at the TMAC, because it is now going to be kept up to date. So I really like the idea of the document camera. I personally use Hightail to send large documents. I think it's a great way to submit, because email systems are limited to usually 10 megabytes. And so you have a large presentation. And then I know the old policy said that if you wanted to bring something in paper, you'd bring 15 copies. I don't think that's still in this document, is it?
Sure. So the number of copies for a person to bring is not in this policy. We have had internal discussions about creating a section on the city's website that will provide guidance for presenters or people bringing materials to the meeting, just because putting it in a policy will make it a little rigid.
That's all I had.
And if Chair, if I may add, just to the question about the TMAC, we do have a friendly URL. I had to make sure I tested on my phone. It's santaclaraca.gov/TMAC. So if you go to that, it should upload the latest TMAC.
Thank you. So the TMAC, we loaded it last Wednesday for the upcoming meeting. So if I hear you correctly, then this Wednesday, we would have the TMAC up for the 12th, which would reflect that.
But that would be after the
Right,
deadline
so
for
I hear
submittal.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
So perhaps we can look at that so that it's out earlier, giving
Nice.
them a
At
little.
least for, and again, there's always the proviso that something could be continued or something could be canceled. People should not bet on that it's going to be there. But it's good to let the public know in advance, so that, people can organize, or they can prepare, or they could do research for that item.
And so the difference with the TMAC now, it's instead of like being, maybe 3, 4, 6 months because it is a tentative calendar, and the language has been revised also for the public to know that things may be deferred, pushed up for whatever reasons. So our attorney's office had revamped that language. But I definitely hear what you're saying, and we will definitely work with getting that information out earlier rather than later.
That would be nice. Thank you. Okay, any member? Oh, city manager.
One more note on this item that we have not talked about, and that is a individual bringing media to the meeting will no longer be allowed to have that displayed at the meeting. That has occurred before. It has been our more standard practice to say no. However, new cybersecurity policies and rules means that we will not be accepting any media provided on a flash drive, CD-ROM, or other device to be input into the system and displayed on the screen.
Okay, and I found my notes that I was looking for. Sometimes there are meetings that are not on Tuesdays, so that Wednesday doesn't really apply anymore. Sometimes we have special meetings that are not on Tuesdays, so I didn't know how we wanted to address that. And then they talked about formats in there, and one of the formats that was not included there was like JPEG or images, if someone had a photograph from their phone that they wanted to send in. But there's lots of, there were a lot of formats listed, JPEGs. I know in the future, there will be lots more formats, but, and I know there's a little other item in there, but I think we should include JPEG in there.
Sure. Chair Jane, I think we may think about taking all formats out of the policy and put that on the website. That way that can change as technology allows. With regard to the date that the TMAC is published,
Well, no, the submission of items, the deadline, yeah.
submission of items, okay.
It should be just 7 days in there, not the Wednesday before or whatever, yeah. Just in case there's a special meeting, right? Yeah.
So, it's funny you bring that up because our next team act would most likely have the 12th and the 19th
Yeah,
because we've
yeah,
got.
yeah.
And what I was going to say is fully understand that the meeting dates may change and they're not always on a Tuesday. However, for our agenda planning, what does stay relatively the same are the days that staff meets as a group to amend, adjust, and plan future meetings. And those meetings are typically on Monday and again on Wednesday. And so our submission or our release date for the TMAC is actually tied to align with those meetings where we're confirming or adjusting the council planning calendar.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval to the amendments to the policy and bring forth to City Council consideration and adoption as Council Policy 041.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Now we move on to the next item, which my document didn't have numbers in it. Number 5, review meeting management procedures. And Maria will introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair Jane. For this item, staff brings forward an item on the governance and ethics work plan, which was to review the current council meeting management procedures. As background, on August 17th, 2021, the City Council held a mid-year check-in session for your council priorities. As part of this session, the meeting facilitator addressed meeting management procedures and Robert's Rules of Order. After the discussion, the council passed a motion to use the following meeting management procedure for a period of approximately 6 months, and were to return to revisit the process at the 2022 council priority setting. This item was not heard at the 2022 council priority session, and the current procedures are still in place without a formal resolution. The next slide illustrates the current meeting management procedures, and it's listed here. Number 1, city staff provides a report on the item if warranted. Number 2, each council member shall have the opportunity to ask their questions. Step 3, city staff shall, to the extent possible, provide a response to all of the council members' questions. 4, the public shall have the opportunity to provide public comment on the item. And 5, at the mayor's request, city staff shall, to the extent possible, provide responses to the comments or questions from the public. 6, a council member shall then make a motion, and the motion shall be seconded by another council member. 7, each council member who wishes to speak to the motion during the deliberation portion of the meeting shall then have the opportunity to make statements regarding the motion. And 8, a vote shall then be taken. As the slide illustrated here, this was part of a draft resolution that is attached to the report, which was never formalized. Next, City Manager Grogan will review some options for the committee to consider and discuss.
Thank you, Maria. So knowing that the city council desired to discuss these procedures, staff provided a few options and there are alternatives to option 2. But option 1 is pretty simple. It's consider the current procedure that's in place now aligns to the steps that Maria outlined. And I will say as a new staff member, the step 2, which is all council members ask all their questions at once, and then staff replies all at once, was a little daunting. I have to say, after having worked with it for a while, it creates efficiencies, and it also has a side benefit of giving staff time to think about the question that has been asked versus a sort of immediate council ask, staff provides a response. It also provides staff the ability to link questions that one council member may ask that's related to another council member's question and provide, or has the ability to allow us to provide a more thoughtful and efficient response. Option 2 is consider revising the procedure in one or more ways, and we'll talk about that. And option 3, at the right time, I will turn it over to the city attorney to discuss considering directing staff to replace Robert Rules of Order with Rosenberg's Rules of Orders, a simplified set of parliamentary rules used in several communities throughout California. So a number of options that the city council may consider, and this aligns to option 2, and these are alternatives: establish time limits, consent for extended comments, a member discussion prior to making a motion, maintain behavioral standards, enforcement, and addressing the chair. And we will talk about each of these at some level of detail. Next slide. So 1, the city or the committee can consider recommending establishing time limits for council member remarks and questions. This has the benefit of ensuring an equal opportunity to speak, and we provided in the report several examples from other cities that have specific time limits. However, on the other hand, specific time limits or limits on the number of times a member may speak may negatively impact the council's deliberations and your idea sharing on important policy matters. You could alternatively continue to rely on the powers of the chair or the presiding officer to guide the city council's deliberations in a timely manner. And this is worth noting a effective strategy that is used in many, if not most, jurisdictions. Our time limits are sometimes set. More often than not, people rely on the powers of the presiding officer. Next slide. Consent for extended comments. So council members seeking to make extended comments may request consent from the chair or the body with majority approval to allow those extended comments. This can be utilized whether the council elects to set specific time limits or without specific time limits if the chair, or only if the chair seeks to limit discussion. So what's envisioned here is if the chair in conducting their presiding duties limits discussion, but a member would like to make extended comments, they can request permission from the body, and a majority vote, they would be allowed extended comments. Again, just an option. You could simply continue to operate as you are now. Next option is provision for discussion prior to making a motion. The council could consider a formal addition of the policy or council discussions prior to the step of making a motion. I think in my experience here, sometimes both happen. Occasionally it's, well, let's make a motion to have discussion, or there's discussion before the motion is made. There's no hard and fast rule here. You can continue to operate how you are. I think when I've seen it, I think it's the presiding officer attempting to move the item along, saying, let's get a motion on the floor. But you may consider adding discussion as a more formal step. It may assist in your policy setting process, and it may facilitate making more constructive motions once you take into account the collective thought from everyone on the city council. I will say adding this as a formal step may potentially also lengthen your meetings, right? Because now you're adding a formal discussion step. And so again, relying on that presiding officer may be a way to go, knowing that this is a tool to be used if needed. Next is additional options to consider. Some communities have more formal policies on council members addressing their comments to the chair or the presiding officer and not to other members on the board or staff. This provides a level of civility as well as it can assist in maintaining order, right? It is a more structured path of comments are always referred to the chair of the meeting. You can also draft language around minimizing repeated points. So council members, you could state should avoid extended restatements of their points already made by other council members. And the chair will preside over these matters and may minimize repeated remarks. You could also have rules around focusing comments on the specific agenda item, as we know that is required by the Brown Act. However, there are times where questions or inquiries can be off topic and are redirected by the chair. I think this happens now, but you could formalize that in your policy if you choose. Next option or alternative is including language around having respectful language and maintaining a professional tone during your discussions, avoiding personal attacks and disrespectful language. And really, this is included and embedded within the city's code of ethics and value statement. You can consider adding that to this policy or just refer back to your ethics and value statement. No interruptions. You can add specific language that will allow any member to speak without interruption. And then the last option to consider here is enforcement. As the chair of the meeting, the presiding officer may raise points of order to address violations of the meeting rules with a right for an appeal from the majority of the city council. Questions regarding applicable rules and questions may require the interpretation of the city attorney. Again, I think this is something that if needed can occur, but you may consider formally including that as written language within the policy. And I will now turn it over to city attorney.
Very good. Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, Chair. Couple of thoughts for you on potentially a significant shift, in your approach to meeting management. I'd like to talk about now, and that would be the shift from Robert's Rules of Order, the current kind of default meeting procedure, approach, to Rosenberg's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order, as I said, is the current default system of the city. And it is for still a lot of cities, and organizations, both in California, and throughout the country. The city itself adopts Robert's Rules of Order under its municipal code, section 2.10.020, with the exception of the code notes rules regarding abstentions being treated as either yes or no votes. Interestingly, somewhat ironically, that is not in fact a rule of Roberts, so it exempts itself from a rule that's not really a rule of Roberts. The code also, not how I would like it in looking at it now, does not make Roberts expressly subject to requirements of the Brown Act or other rules and procedures that the city council might adopt. As a matter of practice, we've done that, of course. We're aware of that and advising you on that. But one of the challenges of Roberts is that it's Roberts. From a dramatic standpoint, this is a great prop, to present, in your closing arguments. Robert's Rules of Order is quite a volume. It was developed back in 1876 originally. It's now in its 12th edition. It is hundreds and hundreds of of pages long. Which is both good and bad, right? It answers every conceivable question, but the bad part of it is it answers so many questions that really aren't relevant, to you. It can be, cumbersome and difficult and potentially confusing. Again, there's so many things we adopt and patterns and practices that we have that probably are inconsistent with Roberts. What does it mean to have Roberts, right? If we're making all these other, other rules. So I think it's served, a number of jurisdictions well, but as a result of the fact that it's dated, really designed for much larger assemblies, than small, nimble, city councils, with 5 to 7, typically members, and that there's so many technical rules in it. There's been a movement started early 2000 to move away from Roberts by a lot of jurisdictions to Rosenberg's. In fact, was first, I think, made widely known when it was authored early 2000s and then was published by actually the League of Cities in Western City Magazine. It was 2003. And since then, a number of jurisdictions, I don't know how many, but I know a number, including within this county, have adopted Rosenberg's as an alternative to Roberts. Here's Rosenberg's, and I'll distribute this maybe if you guys are tempted to go into this. Rosenberg's is 7 pages. It doesn't necessarily have every rule that you would need, but it's got a good, summary of the kind of the key things, that you need to care about without a lot of kind of the baggage and in some respects people consider kind of confusion and extra technical detail of Roberts. Now to the slide here. As I've started to talk about, it's a simplified set of parliamentary rules used in several cities throughout California. Thank you, Maria, and the mayor's distributing kind of a copy of that for you now. A number of institutions have adopted Rosenberg's in lieu of Roberts, finding them practical, logical, simple, easy to learn, user-friendly, while retaining the basic tenets of order. And looking at Rosenberg's before this meeting, their order of taking up matters is substantially similar to the one that you have been operating under and is now proposed for your consideration. Again, has a little bit more detail, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if the person who helped develop that with you referred to Rosenberg's as part of their development of how you take up, issues. And so while today isn't intended to be a full elaborate presentation to you on this, because really it would take some work for us to look at all the various rules, that you have now, look at what you'd be losing with Roberts or gaining, by going away from Roberts. If you want us to look at this more deeply as part of your feedback, to us, because this is hardly your final decision on this, let me know if that's something this group would be interested in pursuing. And we'd go back and put together, not point by point with every aspect of Roberts, right? Because there's so much here we don't need to talk about it, but at least a primary matrix of comparisons, between the two. I'd also be able to engage my colleagues at the different cities here, some of which still use Roberts, some of which use Rosenberg's, about what they consider, the pros and cons, of that, and report that back to you. And no matter what you end up doing, whether you're affirming what you're doing in the meantime, by some recommendation today, I will definitely be recommending that your municipal code section that refers to whatever it is you decide to adopt be revised to make it clear as to the precedence, right, of what your procedures are, right? Your primary, obviously in all cases, you need to follow the charter, you need to follow the Brown Act, you need to follow any other more specific rules and procedures that you might make, but in some respects, it's helpful to have a default, set of procedures, and Rosenberg's, could do that. Another value of Rosenberg's, like all good standards for conduct of meetings consistent with best practices, is it continues to be presiding officer centric, right? You need someone who's the one who's running the meeting kind of and making the basic determinations, about how things are going to be handled. That's your current system. That's Robert's system. Rosenberg's does not at all, go away from that, and that will remain kind of at the core, of the system. So that's my very brief concept, presentation to you about whether or not you might want to go down that path. It's not necessarily in lieu of some of these other things, but ultimately I may come back and tell you, hey, Rosenberg's incorporates, a lot of this stuff. And with some potential additional patchwork, policies, you could have something that combined with Rosenberg's could get at all the different things that you all care about in trying to manage your meetings in an orderly and respectful way. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the city manager for a couple closing remarks on the options, and then we'll take your feedback. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. So this item really is presented to you for your thoughtful discussion. You do not have a staff recommendation. Again, you have a current practice that is no longer codified in something that is adopted by the city council. You can choose to reaffirm that. You can choose to continue as you're operating now or reaffirm it with minor tweaks. Happy to support your deliberation and questions.
So I don't have any issues with the current policy, so-called, what we asked for 6 months. But I have several suggestions on what we can do. I think if we want to make a watertight policy, like time limit for everyone to speak or discussion time limit, that's not what a robust discussion, democratic discussion actually should be, because a topic can vary. Like a topic can be as simple as everybody can finish their comment in 1 minute, and there may be a brand new topic, like whether it's a climate change or something related to a brand new AI topic, which can be, your comments can go beyond 5 minutes or 10 minutes. If somebody is more learned on the council about that topic. So I'm strictly against the time limits, which we don't have right now, but I'm strictly against putting the time limit on that. On coming back to the current policy we have, we have a round of questions. So what the lacuna on our current policy is, let's say everybody finished the questions and there is an answer from a staff about a question being asked. And that can prompt me to ask another follow-up question. So that should be incorporated, like whether we want to incorporate it or whether we put in practice that it should not be limited that, oh, your question term is done, now you cannot even ask any questions. So that ability to ask a question as a follow-up question or a question even during a discussion, that should be retained, because otherwise you are not having a healthy discussion about a topic. You are not making a good decision-making process if you're not even clear about something which you're trying to ask for it. Comments. Even on comments, I see that I don't advise the time limit on that. And sometime you make a comment and somebody else make a comment and you have a follow-up comment to that. And just like a question, follow-up question, you always can have a follow-up comments to make. So that flexibility into the system should be there. If we following it as a thumb rule that, oh, this is the basic structure we have, but in case we have to amend it on a particular topic, we should have that ability. I don't want to be a watertight policy that, no, that's it. You will follow this thing. Because I see on some instances, just to give example, like mayor has given time to the public second time, even third time, and on some time, no time, no, you cannot speak second time. So if we are having that flexibility in that respect, I would like to add that flexibility on that stuff. So these can be a guidelines, but they cannot be an actual watertight policy asset that we cannot deviate, because your discussion, depending on the topic you are talking about, should be handled. And about Rosenberg versus Roberts rule. I have not looked at Rosenberg's yet, but if need be, like, because this seems like much more concise and up to date as per today's environment, probably sort of, if I understand it. If we need to look into that, I would certainly request that if you can have a memo or something from the city attorney, if not as a formal meeting, but as a memo that, hey, these are the drastic changes, and if we implement, these are pros and cons versus one over the other. That would be helpful if the council wants to change from Robert's rule to Rosenberg's rule. Those are my comments. Thank you.
So as the person presiding over the meeting, I'd have to say out in the public, this is probably one of the most talked about items is our council meetings, how long they go, how long people speak, how people repeat, they don't get to the point, wasting time, too hard to watch. You know, I can go on and on and on. People like to watch our council meetings, but nobody can start at 7 and stay with us till 12, 1 in the morning and listening to us talk. We have council members that will go on for 15 or 20 minutes on some monologue. And at the end of the time, I'm thinking, what did they even say? Because it's not productive. It's just not productive. So we had our policy that didn't really work because inevitably we would start the staff report, everybody, is supposed to have their questions ready. And then at the end, there would be, council member 1, 2, 3 with more questions. Okay, so I'll let that happen. They have more questions. Then the staff comes up. We were trying to avoid council member staff, 15, 20 questions by one council member. That's what it was supposed to do. And the council members are supposed to be disciplined. You read your packet, you come with your questions, and certainly, there's times that it's going to spark more questions. I get that. So I've never been strict to say, that's it. That's only the questions. Cause you know who you are out there, council members that ask more questions after. So we get the questions, then the public comes up, and then we come back. And there's council members that'll speak 1, 2, 3 times, start repeating, going on and on about things that aren't on the subject. And that's where the public really gets upset with us. That's where the public's saying, how are you serving us by going on these long discussions? When you think about it, if you have 5 minutes to talk about what your position is on an item, that 5 minutes is like 5 to 7 typed pages of information. That's a lot of information. If you're focused and you know what you're talking about, you can get your position out. You can get it out. But inevitably, I know personally, whenever I get my position out, you have, the typical council members that will come back and tell me why I'm wrong, why my opinion is wrong, and then they'll attack me. I mean, you know who you are, all of you do. So I think that if we're gonna do something, I mean, if it's gonna work better, I believe in some kind of a time limit, because I'll tell you, our public does not like how it's operating now. We cannot have council members go on and on and on, things that aren't even on topic. So when you say in here, like, no interruption, I have to interrupt people when they start repeating for the 2nd, 3rd, 4th time, or they go off topic. I think that it's up to us to really understand that we're serving the public. They're not serving us. They're not there to listen to us go on and on for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes or longer sometimes on issues, because it's not serving them at all. So I'm in favor of whatever process is going to get that moving. And I know Councilmember Chahal just said, I like this process, but I want flexibility. Well, the way it sounded like there's no process, like you can have flexibility. There has to be some guidelines. There has to be some discipline from us. And there has to be, we need to be able to get to the point, which is what I'm trying to do right now, get to the point. I think that it's important that we act like that. And maybe it's not in some of our DNA to be able to do that, but there has to be some guidelines, because we can't be conducting the public's business 11, 12, 1 in the morning. It's just not right. It's not fair. And people, you know, we turn everyone off when we do that. So I think discipline for us is necessary. This Rosenberg Rules of Order is almost identical to what we were doing. So yeah, so whoever, you know, did that from us before, I can't remember who did it, you know, who recommended before. I think they were looking at Rosenberg. So I'm fine with that. I think it would be great with time limits.
So I like the current policy of having all the questions up front. I think it does allow staff time to prepare, but I do, and I'm guilty of asking a lot of questions. And there are often times when I think of a question that I forgot to ask. And so I like to have a second bite at the apple. And so I think at least 2 rounds would be appropriate if we do want to put some sort of limit in there. But I don't like the 1 round policy. I know the mayor has been generous to allow more questions afterwards.
I always have. I have, yes.
And so, but the policy is only 1 round. So that's the issues. Sometimes when you have a policy that is not being followed, and this time for a good reason, it's subject to, misinterpretation or abuse. So I'll just give the prime example, jaywalking. I'm glad we got rid of it. So Rosenberg's, I looked at it. It's, amendments, substitutions. It's, as the mayor said, very, very similar. So I don't exactly see where the differences are, but I think we'll need more time to analyze it. And so I think this is just kind of an information report that we're getting now. We don't have to act on. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I had. In terms of time limits, I know a lot of bodies have time limits. I would like to set a time limit, which is one that would only get invoked maybe once every 3 meetings. It would be generous enough that you're not constantly invoking it. But I think there should be some limit. That's my comments. Jovan.
I know we're just discussing, but if there are time limits that are invoked only occasionally, who would you envision invokes those? Is it the presiding officer, or is it the motion by a member of the board and the majority sets it?
Well, somebody has to be keeping track of it. It might be a burden on the clerk's office, keeping track of how long people are speaking. Otherwise, if no one's has a clock, it's arbitrary.
Oh, so you're saying have a time limit, but have a sort of long time limit that maybe 15 minutes, so total time.
I wouldn't say
15
Total-
minutes? No way. No
I
way.
agree. I'm trying to understand. I know
Total
we're
time.
just having discussion here, but I want to be able to facilitate further conversations with city staff.
total time is a logistic nightmare for the clerk's office because they have to have a running count for every council member and they have to press it as soon as a council member starts and then press this timer when that council member starts and then this one. So.
You could have a timer in my desk and we just press it when someone talks.
Yeah, like.
and then it goes
speed-
off.
Like speed chess.
Really, if you have, you can get your point out in 5 to 7 minutes, but no, 15 and 20 is our problem.
Yeah,
That's
so
the
I mean, I
problem.
would make it 7 minutes or something that would be generous enough that it would almost never get invoked, but.
So my question to that is, do you think somebody speaks for 15 minutes on the council dais? Probably not. Check out the meetings. If somebody's speaking continuously for 15 minutes, I bet you nobody will.
It happens a lot. I time people.
15 minutes
And
continuously,
Raj,
one person?
I have to tell you too sometimes.
Me too.
You would be
Show me.
15 minutes.
I'm open to the challenge. Please go review all the meetings and I'm open to accept that.
You buy me dinner?
Sure, oh, sure. I'll buy you a dinner. I'll buy you a dinner. So that's
We
what I'm
have
saying.
statistics that staff's been keeping if you'd like us to share those with you. No, I'm just, absolutely do not have.
I would love to see my statistics.
It needs self-awareness. We
Wanna
all
see
need
your numbers.
self-awareness.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So as I mentioned earlier, opposed to the time limit, because depending on the topic, like, yeah, of course, I know we do get time and again, mayors say that, okay, please stay to the topic. That makes sense. Okay, stay to the topic. But if somebody's talking on a topic for some extended point of, like, if one other comment I would like to make, when there is a new council member on the dais, he has more questions, definitely, because he's not aware of the process and he's trying to be, he is, doesn't know the answer to all the questions which has happened in the past. So the questions from a new council member may be more. And that's the nature of the business because they're still learning. And if somebody's there on for 20 years, like for him or her, the questions would be less because they know about what has happened in the past, what has happened in the last 3-5 years on that particular topic, if it is a historical topic. So that's the reason I'm saying, like, questions, limit on the questions. I know we do ask secondary questions and it has been almost every time we are being permitted, but restricting the time, I would still not go for that because in democracy, like if you want to have a robust discussion, we should be having a robust discussion. If you're going off track, please not just say, okay, you're going off track. Yeah, for sure, I would accept that.
If there are no other comments, we can conclude this item. Now we'll move on to any member of the public have any suggestions?
No hands are raised at this time.
Okay, we'll move on to staff reports.
I've got these. Yeah, this first item, adding standing item on consent calendar for excusal memos, is not intended to be a policy issue, but really a kind of a Brown Act issue. And I still need to talk with the mayor as presiding officer and with the city clerk about this. But I've observed at some meetings that this item's taken up, as a lot of jurisdictions do, very casually. And we had that down in Chula Vista as well, where although it's not on the agenda, you know, someone submits a request, you know, and an action is taken on a request for a recusal. In order to assure Brown Act compliance, one thing I want to explore, and again, I'll touch base with the mayor and city clerk about it before we actually do it, but just for this group's awareness as a governance body, a remedy for that we used where I came from was to put on the consent calendar kind of a standing item for council member excusals. And if that you get a request for that, you know, before the agenda is posted, that's listed. If it comes after, you know, it can be announced, you know, on the agenda, and then it's just taken up as a formal item. So I think it's a good idea from Brown Act compliance, you know, standpoint to formalize this a little bit. But again, I wanted to work with mayor and city clerk in order to implement that in the near future. And just if you had any issues with that, please, you know, let me know. And mayor, I'll follow up with you.
Had to look up that word to see if it was real.
Excusal, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Very good, good. I sometimes use words that aren't real, so I'm glad that that's a good one. Incentivize, you know, for example, apparently is not a real word, although it should be. I'll jump to the other one that's mine, and then whoever's got the next one can talk about it. The next one, the third item on staff reports really is just a heads up of what's coming your way, you know, on your work plan. We talked about email retention and policy review that's in the works, and we're expecting to have that out on this agenda for March. Same with an update. I know that's been in the works for some time on the lobbying ordinance. And the last one, calendars of certain city officials. I don't know if that's with me, but Maria, is that a work plan item that is part of the regular cycle that we're bringing back in March as well? Why don't I know about that?
I think you do have the report. It's the one that, it's from 2021, from the
Oh, okay.
previous governance committee. The attorney and the clerk, elected clerk were to bring back a template for calendaring to match up to the lobbying, as you recall.
I see. Very good. Yeah, no, appreciate that. Thank you now for the reminder. So that will come back in tandem with the lobbyist registration ordinance in order to make sure those things align. Thank you for that reminder, Maria. That's exactly what it is. So that's really just report heads up on, it's on things that are coming your way of substance. And then I think, Joanne, is it you on the other one?
My quick verbal report is with regard to the city council policy 020 for proclamations, commendations, and certificates of recognition. So my understanding is that there was a existing referral to have that policy discussed at this committee. However, there was also a 030 request submitted by Councilmember Becker in September for potential amendments to that policy, as well as other things that appear to extend beyond the current language in the 020 policy. As you may recall, at that September meeting, I recommended that the request that the council member was making come back to the governance committee if the majority of council wanted to accept that 030. That request was not accepted by the majority of council, and the majority of council directed that the Councilmember Becker's policy suggestions and that 030 go back to the full city council, not to the governance committee. So that is scheduled to occur at the December 12th meeting. Similar to other 030 requests, the first request is a request to the body to discuss, and then the discussion is scheduled. So staff is not currently conducting any analysis on the existing referral that was with the governance committee, nor Councilmember Becker's request. It will be on the 12th for discussion. I think at that time, Councilmember Becker will articulate his desires for a policy change. And as is normal, members of this, because it will be agendized, members of the city council will discuss it. I will again make the recommendation that if the majority of the city council would like amendments or a new policy developed, that be referred to the governance committee, where we typically discuss all policies and then later forward it to the city council. I think when you're doing this detailed policy conversation with red line strikeouts and drafts, it's more appropriate to have it at a committee level where the committee can work very closely with staff and then refer it up to the full body once the committee is satisfied with that. So that again will be my recommendation at the December 12th meeting, should the city council like to proceed with adjustments. And again, those requested adjustments from Councilmember Becker, supported by a majority of council, appear to extend beyond the current 020 policy and may involve an additional policy or redefining what the 020 policy currently is.
Any comments from my colleagues? Okay, any members of the public? Okay, so any member reports or referrals for consideration? Okay, with that, this meeting is adjourned at 4:37.